Back in 1993, I was a senior in high school. I found out that my uncle was dying from AIDS, but everyone in the family labeled it as cancer. I was also grappling with my own identity, being gay, and it all kind of just came together. And I started my AIDS activism really with AIDS Project Los Angeles, APLA in Los Angeles, volunteering through this program called the Buddy Program. And basically, the Buddy Program provided emotional support and paraprofessional counseling for people at end stage of AIDS. I guess two of the surreal experiences I had was really witnessing two of the clients that I volunteered and was assigned to take their last breath. And that really was the kind of seminal, what propelled me to do AIDS activism and be in this work. So APIT, or Asian Pacific AIDS Intervention Team, started in 1987. It was started by a group of gay Asian men who basically were dealing with their friends who were dying from AIDS alone. So we basically started, APIT got started as a grief counseling support program for many of the gay Asian men who were left, whose friends, partners had died from AIDS. As the AIDS epidemic has evolved, so has the work of APAIT. We've become not just an Asian Pacific Islander focused agency, but we also address people of color communities. And over the years, we've also really focused on the issues that are the cofactors or comorbidity issues of HIV/AIDS. And now we are primarily a community mental health organization with obviously a primary focus on the LGBTQ and the HIV/AIDS community. The role of the family in the Asian community is huge. Um, for many, it's their support system. So having that cut off because of their HIV status or their sexual orientation or their gender identity is significant. That's just why there's a lot of stigma and fear of coming out, and that's still quite prevalent today, as it was 30 years ago, and does impact how we approach our treatment modalities in HIV/AIDS. So, for instance, you could go to an organization that provides counseling that may not have the cultural competency in serving Asian cultures and might suggest, oh, you should just come out to your mother. You don't know how they're going to react when that client had literally already mentioned to them, my mother already told me if you came out as gay, I would kill myself. I mean, that's literally an example of a counseling session that we've had in my agency. The role of allies, in particular cisgender women, in the AIDS movement is huge. They have been our caretakers. They have been the folks that we leaned on when nobody else were there. They ended up being our quasi support system when our significant others had passed, or those who we thought were our family disappeared. They've become our chosen family. And I think that it's important that we give them credit, significant credit. We don't give them enough, frankly. So statistics do show that Asian Pacific Islander women tend to have lower rates of HIV. There are certainly different needs than the gay community. The priorities could be about motherhood, that they're raising their children. So it's natural for them to not focus on their own health. And that's why oftentimes when they become diagnosed or find out about their status, it's already classified as AIDS because they had not taken care of themselves. They were taking care of others. But their needs are just as equally important, and it's critical that we do focus on them as well. Asian community activism, you could say indirectly, was a result of really banding together with our fellow communities of color. Because at that time, Asians were just considered other. In order for us Asians to even get a part of the pool of funding to support our community, we did have to work with African American and Latino communities. So I think we need to continue doing that. As a collective of communities of color, we're more powerful and we become the majority, so to speak. So APIT in Los Angeles had a unique role in getting support from the mainstream Asian Pacific Islander community. We were part of this coalition called the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, or APCON, and these are basically mainstream organizations. And part of that work allowed us to really cross that barrier, so to speak, in the mainstream Asian community who may be homophobic or maybe AIDS phobic initially. We provided technical support in how to address clients that they might come across in their respective Asian organizations, mainstream Asian organizations, to deal with somebody who's coming out or deal with somebody who has HIV. I think the biggest thing that the Asian Pacific Islander community still has to tackle in the HIV community is still very much stigma, bringing shame to the family by being diagnosed with, um, a sexual health illness like HIV or sexually transmitted infection is just a no-no. They isolate that person, or they reject that person, or they just treat them differently. And we still see that today. We see that in Asian immigrant communities. We see that in conservative Asian communities. So we need to not just educate the people who are at risk, but their families. It's about addressing the stigma in families, in Asian families.